Hi, I'm Leezá Steinorf. I'm an international leadership coach, a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and I've helped thousands of leaders unlock power that they didn't even know they had. And today I want to show you something you may be overlooking because your most powerful leadership trait might be the one that no one sees. So, have you ever been told that you're too quiet to lead? Have you ever watched louder, more dominant voices take the spotlight while your quiet confidence went unnoticed? If you've ever wondered whether you're missing something to lead powerfully, I want to offer you a different lens to look through. Because in this video, I'm going to show you how the most transformative leaders often lead from the inside out, not from volume or charisma or even control. And by the end of this conversation, you'll walk away with 3 clear traits that you may already have, but likely aren't using to their full potential, because you may even not recognize them. And I'll show you how to apply them today to lead with more confidence, influence, and also alignment, I'm going to say, than you ever have before. So that's what's available. All right, let's dig in. And let's begin with clarity, right? So there's a big myth that leadership is about being the loudest voice in the room, the biggest energy in the room. That's not leading, right? Some people may lead that way, but that's not the definition of leadership. In fact, clarity in leadership often comes from an internal grounding, something you do quietly, unnoticed, not some external force. It's the presence you embody when you walk into a room or when you take on a project or when you're leading a team. And you may not be the person to bark orders, but when you walk into that room with that clear sense of who you are and what you value and what you're bringing into the table and where you're going, people feel that. They absolutely feel that. So invisible leadership power shows up in how you ask thoughtful questions instead of giving quick answers, right? You take a moment. It's pausing before you react, but actually taking the time to respond, to create space for your knowing and for the knowledge in the room to emerge before you speak. And it's also holding a centered presence that calms the storm instead of feeding into it, that you are that anchor, right? So that kind of clarity does not shout, it's not loud, it's not flamboyant, but it shifts the energy of every room that you walk into. It calms it, it brings a cohesion. All right. So leadership is not about what you say first. It's about how you see first. The lens that you use when you walk into a room or into any situation. Okay. So let's talk about ownership and owning your ability to lead, owning yourself as a leader. So once you're grounded in that clarity of who you are and what you're there to do, the next step is ownership. And I don't mean control over others. That's not what we talk about. When I speak of ownership, I'm speaking about knowing that who you are and how you show up is a gift. It's what you're bringing to the table. It's the contribution that you bring. And you take 100% responsibility for your behavior and your own actions. You're not responsible for other people, but you have influence and you can support and you are accountable. So when I'm speaking about ownership in this regard, I'm speaking of owning your presence, your energy, and your values, right? You don't have to wait for a title or for some permission to lead. You can step into leadership literally in any situation that you feel drawn to do that. So leadership is when you take responsibility for how you show up, and it does not matter who's watching. Okay? So let's see how it might look. It might look like choosing to stay aligned with your values when other people are cutting corners or insisting on sweeping something under the carpet, like doing things that maybe are slightly off, not aligned with your values, but you stay true to your values. It can also mean that you are composed when emotions start running high and you can feel that people are tense and maybe explosive, and you find that groundedness in yourself. It can also look like saying something like, I don't know, I can't answer that question, but I'm going to find out. right? It doesn't mean having all the answers, but it means I'm going to take responsibility for not knowing and for the fact that you want to know. So I'm going to find that out for you. And you do that then with integrity. So those aspects of leadership, that owning of your presence isn't flashy. It's not, big names and lights up on a billboard. It's a very grounded, strong presence. And it earns respect that no performative leadership ever will, right? If you know the book Good to Great, it's an amazing business book. Some business books can be dry. This one is phenomenal. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. Written by Jim Collins, I believe it might have been in the late 90s, early 2000s, from Harvard Business School. And he established in this amazing research that they did on companies that were not only good, but the ones that became great. What were the distinguishing factors of those companies that became great? And one of them is what they called a level 5 leader. And I want to just give you a short synopsis because I think that really summarizes what it is that I'm talking about here as far as owning your presence. And they spoke about the fact that most successful leaders of great companies, they didn't stand out because they had bold charisma or big egos. In fact, almost the opposite. They were modest and sometimes even understated. And their strength came from this deep personal humility, and it was paired with a fierce professional will. They wanted to get stuff done. They weren't interested in personal recognition or accolades or even building a legacy around their name. Their priority was always the success of the company, even after they were long gone. They were known for that. So rather than saying, look at what I built, these leaders really focused on what needs to be done for this company to thrive or for this team to succeed. And they often gave credit to other people when things went well. And they took responsibility when things did not go well. That is so key. And how often have you seen that happen? And when leaders give other people credit for the successes and they take the responsibility when things don't go well, that's a person that most people want to follow and join with in partnership. So they avoided the spotlight, but behind the scenes, they were intensely driven and disciplined and unwavering about long-term results. So in short, they were not ego-driven. They were really mission-driven, and they were stewards and self-effacing, but absolutely relentless about their excellence. So that's the kind of leadership that we're talking about when you're a quiet leader, when you're a grounded leader, when your presence is what the biggest element is of your leadership. And this is where invisible leadership turns into unshakable influence, and not because you demand it, but because you literally embody it. So let's talk about resolution. And the way that I speak of resolution is when things are maybe out of alignment or are not in sync with our values or with our vision. How do we bring this together? How do we create resolution and rectify situations like that? So let's talk about something that most leaders actually don't admit out loud. And that is that performing leadership is exhausting. To always have to show up and be the man or, make it look good, that's just draining. If you have that kind of energy, if you have big energy and you can show and shine like that, that's phenomenal. Then do that. I'm inviting you to be all of who you are. But if that's not your style, if you're quiet, if you're soft-spoken, if you're reflective, then be that. So many people are playing a role that they think they're supposed to play, when in fact, your real power comes from not needing to perform at all, right? It means showing up as you are and trusting that. When you have the skill sets to be in the position that you're in, you can trust your being to lead yourself and to lead others through. So resolution means letting go of that need to prove your leadership and instead living it literally from the inside out. And when you're doing that, because you're not trying to prove something, you stop second guessing yourself. You stop competing with louder voices, and you can begin to build that trust in your calm and in your grounded knowing. So when you stop chasing approval or trying to live up to some image that either you have or somebody gave you that you're supposed to live up to, you let that go and you start trusting your inner compass, then you resolve this invisible tension that's been draining you, right? Sometimes for years, maybe. This is where your inner stillness, your groundedness becomes your outer strength, and you live and you lead from that place. All right, so let's talk about the fourth element, excellence. And I've shared this before, but let me again speak about what I mean with excellence. It doesn't mean it's polished and presentation perfect. Excellence is when you bring your highest and your best no matter what. That's excellence. And excellence doesn't have to be loud, right? It's intentional. You're clear about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you're doing it with the absolute epitome of your highest and best. So the best leaders don't leave wreckage in their waste. They don't leave people just saying, oh my gosh, what the heck just rolled through here, right? They live clarity and courage and a sense of momentum that is calm, that other people can engage with and move with. There's a sense of certainty when a leader is really leading from their excellence. So when you embody invisible leadership traits like deep listening, like really taking the time to hear people, not just what they're saying, but really hear where they're at, and having that steady presence that we've spoken about, but being consistent about that, like grooming that as a way of your daily presence. And when your values are what's driving your decision making, and that becomes known, not only that you feel that it's congruent, but that the people that you are leading can see that that's how you lead. And when you do that, you give other people permission to rise and also to lead in their realms. And you create an environment of trust. First of all, trust in yourself, which invites other people to trust themselves, right? Which is the ultimate in professionalism. And then you create an environment where people are trusting each other. So when you model what self-leadership looks like, other people can follow that same thing with confidence. Leadership is not only guiding people, it's also being a role model that they can emulate. So that's not just leadership, that's really actually a legacy. That's what you leave in your wake. All right. So what I'd like to do today is to leave you with something. And here's what I want to share with you, a practice that you can take on if you want to. I want you to pick one of the invisible traits that I've spoken about. Maybe it's deep listening or emotional steadiness or your using your values to drive your decision making, whichever one it is, that you take that one invisible trait and in your next conversation, you bring it forward. Like you be intentional about it. You let it rise, you let it resonate, you let it grow bigger, you listen more deeply. You double check if your values are aligned with that decision. You make sure that you're steady when things become a little bit hectic, and maybe you express that. So whatever that invisible trait is that you want to grow in your next situation, your next conversation, your next team meeting, let it come to light. Emphasize it. You don't have to prove it. You just live it. And then see how the room responds. All right, so if this video helped you recognize your own quiet leadership power, I invite you to like the video and also to subscribe to the channel, and then share it with someone who maybe also needs a reminder that they're more than enough exactly the way that they are. And if you're ready to lead with clarity and ownership and resolution and excellence, I invite you to check out the resources below. This is your time to lead from the inside out. That's what you came here to do.